Welcome to the Housing Roundtable of 2025, December 15th, 2025. We're here tonight with several town boards and housing organizations and committees with the objective of helping to coordinate, monitor, and implement Concord's housing production plan. This is my first Housing Roundtable, and I'm very excited to be here tonight to help moderate this collaborative meeting. For those of you who I have not had the opportunity of meeting, I'm Kristen Guichard. I'm the new director of the Regional Housing Services Office. I've been working alongside Liz Rust as co-directors as we transition leadership this year. Just a quick note, we are recording this meeting. There are people joining here physically in the meeting room and virtually. There's about 15 people attending here tonight. So I know that we have some boards and committees that need to officially call roll if they have quorum. So why don't we get started with that, and how about we go alphabetically? So let's see, we've got the Concord Housing Authority. Stephanie? Or, oh, yes. Great.
Okay, Kristen, nobody will be able to hear anybody in the audience. You're going to have a mic.
There's a mic right there.
Yeah. So just, yeah, if you're going to speak, approach a microphone, please. Ed, are you the only person here from the Housing Authority?
No, well, physically, Stephanie's on.
Okay, great. So just to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Ed Honor, Elsinore Street, treasurer for the Concord Housing Authority.
Okay.
I don't have a report to give.
Not yet.
We're just doing the roll to see.
Yeah, I think we're
who's
just checking to see who's here to call roll if there's a quorum for the Concord Housing Authority. Are there any other members of the Concord Housing Authority here with us tonight? Oh, great.
Great. Maybe
All
we'll
right.
move to the next board. I don't think two is a
Excellent.
quorum.
The Concord Housing Development Corporation.
Hello, Julie McClure here, chair of this Concord Housing Development Corporation. I see we also have Lee Smith attending via hybrid meeting. Thanks for joining, Lee. And I believe we do not have a quorum, but happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust.
Keith Bergman, chair of the trust. We have all seven of our members here, or six virtually, six in person rather, one virtually. So we have Mary Hartman, Mike Lawson, Rich Feely, Gary LaFleur, Matt Johnson, and online Linda Escobedo. All seven. Thank you.
Excellent. The Community Preservation Committee.
Eve is the chair.
Do we have Eve or Diane?
Yeah, Eve's the chair. Can she hear us? She cannot hear us.
So,
Oh,
Maybe
Elizabeth, would
maybe
you
she-
mind helping Eve unmute or to press the ask to unmute button?
Good.
Thank you.
You should be able to unmute herself.
it's not working. Okay. There we go.
There you go.
Now, can people hear me? Sorry about that.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I am now able to unmute. My name is Eve Eisenberg. I'm chair of the CPC. Ed is also on my committee, but I think Diane will be joining us if she's not in the room there as well. That is not a quorum of the CPC, but we're also happy to be here.
All right, great. Thank you, Eve. The Concord Housing Foundation.
Rich Feely, Chair. We have two members present, Matt Johnson in the room and Nancy McJennett. Since we're a nonprofit 501c3 and not a town organization, I don't think we need to do anything more formal. Thank you.
Excellent. The Planning Board.
I do not, unless there's somebody in the meeting room. I think, oh, is that Pat in the front row?
Yes. Yeah, we have Pat Nelson here.
So Pat Nelson is the, and I don't see anybody online.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. And from the Select Board,
Okay, I'm Mark Howell, Chair of the Select Board, and we have all members here. So we have Wendy Ravelli. Cam McKinnett. Here. Mary Hartman, here in the room, and also online, Paul Bohm.
Here. Hi.
Didn't hear you very well, Paul, but we'll try again.
Hello, I'm here.
Great.
all right,
Thanks.
excellent.
So the Select Board meeting will be called to order at 5:13 for the minutes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, well, let's get started with updates from the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust with Keith's presentation.
Try not to trip over the thing. Thank you. All right, can everyone hear me? Very good. Keith Bergman, Chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. First, thanks to all of our Roundtable board members for your leadership. This familiar slide is all of us, and I should say that this slide deck, which is revised from an earlier one some of you might have seen, is posted at the Trust's webpage at the town website, and we'll make it available afterwards as well. The Roundtable boards are collectively charged with coordinating implementation of the 5-year housing production plan. That plan, approved by the Select Board and Planning Board in 2022, will expire in 2027. Recently, the Trust approved the town's request for $56,000 to prepare a new 5-year plan. That project launches next year. In the meantime, the Regional Housing Services Office has drafted an informational update noting changes in local circumstances since 2022 that we want to enter into the record of a future public hearing that DCAM holds on MCI Concord. Here again are levels of affordable housing in Concord and the region. Up to 80% of AMI, area median income, counts on the subsidized housing inventory. Above that, CPA funds can be used for up to 100% of AMI, ARPA funds up to 120%. Concord's planned residential development zoning and home rule petitions to fund the trust are for up to 150% of AMI. Concord's subsidized housing inventory remains at 13.34%, where it was when we last met. After falling below 10% 2 years ago, the town briefly reached 16% this past April, but the Novo 40B fell off when it had not pulled its building permit within 1 year of ZBA approval. That same thing could happen for the thorough 40B this coming April, and if so, our SHI would be at 10.039, still above the state goal, but just barely. But if and when both 40Bs do pull their building permits, at that time, 16.14% of Concord's total housing stock would be countable on the subsidized housing inventory, but only 7.24% would then be restricted at some affordable level. We'd need 200 more such units to be able to say that 10% of our housing stock is affordable. The Trust can act quickly when opportunities arise if funding is available. We maintain and periodically update a list of priority projects with your input and invite project sponsors to apply for trust funds when you're ready to proceed. The Trust has received a total of $6,026,000 since 2019. Of that, $3,562,000 has been committed for the projects that are listed here. Our funding sources, $500,000 in town ARPA funds, $3.2 million from the general fund, including earned interest income, and $2.28 million from community preservation. Our current uncommitted fund balance is $2,464,000. That balance reflects 3 grants awarded since the Roundtable last met in August. Those are $40,000 to continue CHDC's small grant program, $56,000 for the town to update the housing production plan, and $300,000 for a retrofit fire sprinkler project for 52 existing units at the Housing Authority's Everett Gardens. And that, by the way, leverages $750,000 in state funding for that project. Beyond these, the Trust will be discussing CHDC's request for an additional $300,000 in short-term borrowing for its buy-down program, and the big question before us, whether the Trust should acquire and develop 91B Main Street. MassDOT is offering that 1.45-acre surplus state property to the town for $600,000. The Trust's $500,000 in ARPA funds is earmarked for this purchase, and those funds must be spent by December of 2026. The state can transfer this property directly to the Trust with the Select Board's approval under our town bylaw. No town meeting vote is required. As the property owner, the Trust, assisted by the town and the Regional Housing Services Office, would issue a request for proposals to select the developer. And the Trust would need the Select Board's prior approval to transfer the property to that successful proposer. So the Trust has asked RHSO to update estimates of what subsidy would be needed for this property. We're looking at 4 ownership units, and I have identified 3 options. At 80% of AMI, up to 100% of AMI, and up to 120%. And those are summarized in this slide. With the highest proceeds of sale, the 120% of AMI option requires the lowest subsidy from the Trust, $1,933,000, or $483,000 per unit for acquisition and development. At 80% or 100% of AMI, sales proceeds would be less, and the Trust subsidy would be more. The results of the RFP process would inform which option is pursued. At the 120% option, for example, the Trust's available balance, ending balance for this fiscal year would be $230,000. If April town meeting then approves the $785,000 that we've requested, and which has been favorably recommended by the Community Preservation Committee, thanks very much, CPC, our trust fund balance would be $1,016,000. At either the 80% or 100% options, our fund balance would be lower. Meanwhile, the town continues to pursue state legislation to fund the trust. The legislature's Joint Committee on Revenue has favorably reported out the Senate version of the LOHA Coalition's statewide local option real estate transfer fee bill. That same committee, however, has yet to act on Concord's transfer fee bill. Of note to us, the Massachusetts Municipal Associations just released a set of recommendations to address the fiscal perfect storm facing local communities. Happens to include a real estate transfer fee for affordable housing. So stay tuned. For the future, the Trust remains bullish on the 2 once-in-a-generation initiatives the Select Board has launched with the MCI Concord Advisory Board and the Land Use Working Group. And we look forward to hearing more about both of those this evening. Mindful of these opportunities and working with the Massachusetts Housing Partnership this year, the Trust refreshed its mission, goals, and strategies and is advocating that we reach 10% of our, that 10% of our housing stock be affordable through use of trust funds and through regulatory measures. Also with MHP, the trust has explored how to better use our limited local funds to leverage outside investment. Our site visits have included facilities in Acton, Hudson, and Shrewsbury. We look forward to putting those lessons to work with whatever housing opportunities might come out of the MCI Concord and Land Use Working Group initiatives. Lots to talk about. Thanks again for your advocacy and leadership, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
I have one question. What are the sizes of the units that would be proposed at 91B, given
The size of the units at 91B Main Street would be 1,200 square feet.
1,200 square feet?
The property happens to be located right next door to what was a habitat, two affordable units that was built just a few years ago. And I didn't mention it specifically, but if there's interest from Habitat in being a developer for this property, then some of the, for 91B Main Street, then some of the costs might be lower than what we're otherwise projecting. That was our experience with Assabet River Bluff.
And how many bedrooms would be in the 1,200 square feet?
There would be 9 bedrooms, if I'm hearing the question. 9 bedrooms, I think carefully designed to keep it under the limit for sewer connection that would require a vote of the Public Works Commission.
So 4 units, 9 bedrooms, so
It-
mostly 2-bedroom units. Yeah, okay.
Okay. I see another question.
Ask a couple of questions,
Sure.
if it's okay. So first of all, thank you. Really informative. Appreciate everybody's efforts here. So just a couple questions. So the study coming in 2026, just out of curiosity, like will the housing trust be like driving that study, or is it like a different committee that's going to study the next level housing production plan?
Oh, I see. Yeah. What's the?
Yeah, who's just sort of
Right,
involved?
what-
I mean, it's
what
a
would
big
we-
thing, right? We've got MCI coming, we've got, these
Right.
potential new developments coming. There's a lot of interest and a lot of things
Right.
going on in the town. So I'm just curious as to how, if we've given some thought to, or if you know how it's all going to be sort of managed from a study perspective.
I would certainly defer to the town staff who requested the $56,000, but I would say that my understanding is that it would proceed, that the next formal update of a 5-year plan must proceed through a similar process as the last plan with plenty of public hearings, public input, that 5 years ago, we established a steering committee with representatives from this group that would work with the town and its consultant on the plan. Interestingly, 5 years ago, there were only 4 in this group, and one of our recommendations was there ought to be 3 more. We had the 4 with housing in their names, and we needed the select board, planning board, and CPC there. So our hope would be that there'd be representation from a group like this to work with the RHSO and the town on the new plan. It would have to be approved by the select board and the planning. The plan would have to be approved by the select board and the planning board, and then it gets approved by the state.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's great. Just understanding sort of the level of involvement there. I think it's really helpful, so thank you for that. Secondly, you mentioned novo and no permit. Does that mean that what does that mean in terms of, like, could they still come back?
Sure.
For a permit, or how,
yes,
are they sort of kicked out permanently?
Well,
or is that
it's a good
temporary thing?
question. That it means nothing to them and everything to us. I'll say that they have their permits, which are good for, they being Novo and Thorough, they have permits that are good, I think, for 3 years, Elizabeth, and that they are subject to further extension for probably any reason, to continue to have the permit, the ability to proceed. As a practical matter, one of the time limits that I'm aware of is that the trust with Novo, we have a 3-year grant agreement where we've offered to, we have signed a grant agreement that says we will pay just under $400,000 in trust funds for the sewer hookup for the 51 affordable units. That's in a 3-year grant agreement, which has 2 years left in it. So they'd at least need to come back and explain where they are and what they're doing.
Okay, so they could come back and it could be something that comes back into our affordable housing inventory.
Right.
We don't know yet.
I think there's the full expectation that absent a financial meltdown outside of Concord, in the world at large, that those two developers are going to move forward with their projects. But we have to take them off our subsidized housing inventory until they until they have the building permits. You can stay on for a year, then you need the building permit, then you fall off. If you get your building permit, you're back on for 18 months, and if you don't have your occupancy permit after that, you fall off again.
Gotcha.
So-
Okay. And final question, I promise, and then I will cede the mic. Just looking at the Main Street, $961,000 per unit. It sounds like a fair amount of money. And, when you consider what other sort of 2-bedroom condos sell for in Concord, one could say you could just buy existing condos and subsidize those versus building new ones for, close to $1 million a piece. So I'm just curious about how that sort of, works from from a math perspective.
Yeah,
I think people would hear $1 million a unit and say, that's not really building affordable housing.
Yeah, that's good. That's certainly one of the reasons why we asked to have have the cost estimates updated, so that we would see how does everybody feel about that larger figure. That figure includes a purchase price on the land. Sometimes per unit cost for development, it speaks in terms of what's the development cost. This is and when we buy property, we're, if it's an existing unit, we're paying for that and to fix it up, presumably. So I think what we would look at, not only what is the total cost of bringing the units online, but also what is the net cost? Because if it were, say, a rental property, we would eat that entire cost, and if it's an ownership property, then it would be sold, and then we would get those proceeds of sale to reduce the amount that we need from the trust. So that's another variation to look at.
I think we also need to look at that $500,000 as essentially a gift from the federal government. We can't use it for anything else. Think of it as if a citizen gave us $500,000 worth of land. And secondly, you'll notice in those estimates, there's a $500,000 developer's fee. Given that we're providing the land and the strength of the market in Concord, I'm hoping we could negotiate that down a bit. And finally, when you're talking 120% of AMI, you're talking that the buyer is able to put an interesting sum of money on the table. You're not going to have to spend $600,000 per unit from the town's tax money to make those happen.
Great, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Mary?
Thank you.
Do you want to? Okay, microphone. And then we'll go to Paul online.
I have a quick comment. The site visits that you mentioned briefly, since I was on all 3 of those site visits, I'd like to just give some of my impressions. The common denominator in all 3 of those was, first of all, The people that we saw when we visited these sites had a strong sense of ownership and a pride in their homes that, remember, these are all rentals, and yet I sensed when we saw people, when we visited their unit or saw them in the hallways or outside, I sensed that people had a very strong sense of ownership and pride and ownership for rentals. And the second comment I want to make is these developments were all were all built using state and federal funds, and the fact that they were put together by development corporations that knew how to put together deals like that, that were able to build denser units at a lower cost per unit, is something that I think I would like to see more of here in Concord.
Paul?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so Keith, could you say something about the future funding picture of the trust? I mean, it's great that we have this 500K, but the economics on 91B takes the fund balance pretty low, and then you have CPC funds coming in, but relying on CPC funds as a sole source may not get you the goals that you want. The real estate transfer tax seems like a big positive upside. Can you just comment a bit on the funding sources and what your view and what the risks are going forward, you think?
Sure. Excellent question about what's our future funding sources for the trust. Until and unless the state authorizes a real estate transfer fee, I should mention the state's already said no to, or just said no, again, to a building permit surcharge that we've asked for. That died, and that was referred to as study, death by study, in a legislative committee. So until and unless we get state legislative authority for an outside funding source, our only funding source locally would be the Community Preservation Act, which is, and our goal is to ask for 25% of whatever we're one of the 4 buckets: open space, historic, recreation, and housing. So 4 buckets, they had typically around $2 million. And we've received no less than $500,000 from the CPC for the last several years, often more, which we're grateful for. So that's kind of it. I mean, to Mary's point about what, of going to a different model for using funds, because everything that we've talked about, that we've shown here is, and can point to, has really been the trust being almost the entire source of the funding, or the trust and the CPC together, and maybe we can squeeze out a few units here or there. But there's a way to break through and use whatever the limited funds are, even if it's just amassing maybe a few $1 million over time. If we have a property in Concord where we could work with a development team that wants to go after the so-called low-income housing tax credits, which are big money, they are tough to get. Last time that Concord put together a project with a lot of state funding was for the project that didn't happen, Christopher Heights at Junction Village. I think for the future, the opportunities that would come from MCI Concord and the Land Use Working Group with whatever properties are identified by the town. I've said many times I'm agnostic on what the properties should be. There are processes the town has put in place to determine what those are, but wherever the housing can go, that's where we ought to be leveraging, if it's just a few $1 million that the trust has, to leverage the big money that some other communities are doing, and they're doing it with no more money than we have. So there's a smarter way to spend the money. Rich?
So just as a follow-up, working towards that new model.
Yeah,
Paul
first.
Paul and then Rich.
Yeah, just working towards that new model that Mary described, you signed up for. Do we have a strategy in enacting that model, or is it kind of ad hoc, or how do we move forward on the new model? Because I think the funding picture, certainly in the absence of the real estate transfer tax, points in that direction, doesn't it?
Well, I think the answer is that whenever, it's as soon as there's land that's identified to do something with. And I've been on the land use working group for a year, and we haven't even been able to talk about housing yet. And MCI Concord discussions we're not privy to. So we're waiting I think the housing community is waiting to hear what are the opportunities that the town can point us to so that we can use our money in a way that maximizes our investment.
Just two things quickly. One, our estimates have been that if we get the transfer fee as passed by town meeting, we would get on average over $2 million a year. But there's also something that's out there already, and remember that these projects all have the gestation period of the great blue whale, and by the time we're ready to move on the land, we will start to be seeing some money from the development fees paid by Newbury Court. So that's another opportunity for us to have local money to put on the table to multiply with other sources.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you, Keith. Very, very informative. Lots of great work happening. I was just going to quickly turn it over to the Housing Authority to call roll. I think they have a quorum here now.
I believe we do have a quorum.
Yes.
I'm here, Stefan Bader, Chair, and I see Ed Larner, and I see Stephanie Crow back on the Zoom. Thank you, Stephanie. And I think that's it. I don't see B, and I don't see Rick Eifler.
I think B is on.
B
I
is
see
on?
her. Yeah.
I don't know if she can unmute herself. I know I couldn't from home. That's why I had to drive down here.
Yeah, just real quick. I was actually here earlier for the vote and couldn't unmute myself, so
Okay, B, if
I
you're
think the
here.
same is the case for B.
All right, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Up next, we have the town update from Town Planner Elizabeth Hughes.
Was the Housing Authority going to give us its update?
I think they're
Lower on the agenda.
they're a bit further
Okay.
down.
We're just doing roll call out of sequence.
So I'm just going to, if you're online and participating in the Zoom and you're a member of one of these boards and you want to be recognized, just raise your hand and we'll recognize you, and that'll put you through the unmute process, and then you'll be able to participate fully. So
Great, thank
if
you.
you're waiting to be called on, just, there you go. It looks like B would like to be recognized. So if we could give her the ability to unmute herself as needed, that would be great.
She should be able to unmute herself.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, B.
I see Diane Proctor in the list too. I don't know whether she wants to be joined for the CPC when they get around to that.
I would be grateful when it's our turn. Even if Eve's not here, I will step in, and if Eve's here, she will.
Eve's
Okay.
online as well, Diane. Thank you.
I know, I
Okay.
saw that. Thank you very much.
All right. Sorry. Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you. So I have, starting with, I was asked 40B updates for the Novo Riverside Commons project at 300 Baker Ave. I can tell you that they have gone to the planning board and have received endorsement of the approval not required plan to divide off the lots. They have also, last week, went to the Zoning Board of Appeals to have a particular condition modified. There is one condition in the comprehensive permit tied to the parking, the occupancy of the buildings, and the building of the parking garage, which they are no longer moving forward with building the parking garage. They do have approval to remove a portion of existing 300 Baker Ave where Welch's is, and will be doing a small parking area there and having a parking agreement So they had to come back to the Board of Appeals to amend that specific condition, which the board did find administratively approved. So that happened last week. And they have made a couple other minor amendments to the plans, which are currently, one dealt with some modifications to the stormwater, and that's currently being reviewed by the outside consultant who reviewed the whole project during the permitting. So that's moving forward for the Thoreau residences at Thoreau. They have also received endorsement from the planning board for the approval not required plan to divide off the property. They have submitted all of their hydrological analysis to DEP, which is the first step in their groundwater discharge permit for their on-site sewage disposal. DEP reviews that hydrology analysis first. Once they approve that, which we've been told by DEP is supposed to happen within the next few months, then they file the rest of the permitting requirements and plans for the groundwater discharge permit. And the expected time frame for that approval is sometime in April or May. Once they receive approval for their groundwater discharge permit, then they can actually move forward with, they would not be able to apply for a building permit and get approval until they have that groundwater discharge permit. So they're kind of at the mercy of DEP and their review process, but they are moving forward with their items. They have submitted their they have an agreement with the town that was submitted, reviewed by town council, so they're moving forward with other items of their permit while we all wait for DEP to do its review. So that's the update I can give you on that. For MCI, the update I can give you from the planning division and the community development director. We are currently working on a scope of work to go from the next phase of the visioning process to a master plan process, which would be a much more refined process of specifically what to build and where to build it. Through the master plan process, once that, again, would be a similar community-wide process with different boards, committees, outreach, community involvement. Once that process goes through, then there would be the development of the actual zoning to implement that master plan. So that's right now, the director and I are putting together that scope of work for that master plan. MBTA communities, I'll give that update during the planning board's section. And then for the land use working group, the deputy town manager provided me and the director an update. The land use working group continues to meet regularly and is an exploratory, data-driven phase focused on understanding Concord's long-term needs for municipal facilities and how town-owned land could support future housing. There are different subgroups in the land use working group. One is focused on municipal consolidation, public works, and public safety. They have been narrowing down options using the 2020 facilities assessment with staff input and additional technical information, with subgroup reports expected at the end of January. A key part of the next phase is developing professional studies to better understand development opportunity and housing yield on several municipal parcels, including Peabody School, Ripley School, the Kais Road Public Works Campus and Community Development, and the Church Street Campus, which would be 55 Church, Harvey Wheeler, and the Children's Center. These studies are intended to test how many housing units different sites could support under various zoning scenarios. The goal is not to advance a specific proposal, but to establish realistic ranges, identify constraints, and understand trade-offs early in the process. At the same time, staff are advancing space and concept planning at MCI Concord related to public works needs, and beginning to draft a scope for a public safety needs assessment. Looking ahead, site prioritization work will continue, additional studies will be procured, and the January subgroup reports will help inform the next phase of the full working group discussion. So those are my 4 updates.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Are there any questions for Elizabeth before we move on? All right, I don't see any virtual hands raised either, so let's move on to the Concord Housing Development Corporation with Julie.
Hi there, Julie McClure, Concord Housing Development Corporation. I see we have 2 items on our agenda, or perhaps 3, depending on how you count it. First of all, we have the Assabet River Homes that's located on Old Marlborough Road near the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. And if you visited recently, you might have noticed there's construction happening there. So this is very happy. We did have some fun reports from the public about big construction equipment entering and exiting at one time when there was also road work happening on Main Street. And I know there was a lot of activity on Main Street recently that was then rerouted toward Old Marlborough Road. But luckily, it looks like it's all moving forward. I did receive a question recently about the ownership of that site, and the CHDC continues to hold the deed while the project happens with a unit-by-unit lease to ensure the development moves forward. And so far, it looks like that's happening, so we're really grateful to be working with Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell on that project. We also have a small grant update. This past quarter, we approved an increase in small grant funding, so you could get more money for needed repairs if needed in your household. If your household is facing economic hardship and you need a new hot water heater or you have a leak in the roof, we review those kinds of proposals, and it helps people stay in Concord, so we're really proud to do that work. And we are grateful to the Trust for approving that increase in funding. And we also have the buy-down program. For people who are not aware, I think we had a little bit of a celebration of this concept earlier in our meeting when someone mentioned, why not buy some existing condo units and subsidize them? Well, it turns out we have done that in this community at least 4 times, not necessarily condo units, but housing units that have become subsidized housing in an ownership model. And we hope to do more projects like that in the future. At one point, we had about $500,000 dedicated to the project. However, because of the rate of appreciation, it was very limited inventory available at that price. So we are working right now with the Trust to increase the budget for that project, perhaps to closer to the $700,000 range, so that we might be able to identify housing that could support folks with a subsidy, and it would help us get more units on the SHI. So that is my update, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Great work. Back to Elizabeth for the planning board update.
Great. So the planning board has 7 potential warrant articles that they're reviewing right now for the 2026 annual town meeting. One article, which don't think it's going to be controversial, is to change in the zoning bylaw the word building inspector to building commissioner. They are also looking at a exterior lighting bylaw, which currently there's a short reference to exterior lighting in the parking section of the zoning bylaw. So they are looking at an actual entire exterior lighting bylaw, new section. They are going to bring back the joint parking bylaw amendment that last year had the confusion with the presentation. What they heard was a lot of people, parking is a very complicated item, and the confusion with the presentation only made it worse. So what they did hear from quite a few people is that they just voted no because they didn't understand. So the planning board is going to bring that article back. We have been working with town council on amending the wireless bylaw, which was a goal for the select board that the planning board agreed they would charge ahead with that. Another item is looking at changing the height of the buildings permitted in the limited business 1 district, which is that area from on Elm Street at Route 2, from the little office building to the gas station, the hotel, the new Cross Point development, and the new Dunkin' Donuts. For some reason, the height limit in that district is 25 feet. I have not figured out why it was 25 feet, but they are looking to have it go up to 35 feet to match all the other commercial districts in town. Then the last two is amending the MBTA Communities Overlay District so that the town can be found in compliance by the June 12th deadline. And the planning board is looking to amend the combined business residence bylaw, rebrand it to be mixed use, which is what most people understand when you have a commercial and a residential project together. And so I will go into the MBTA and show you that section first. Let's see. Okay, so once the town received the conditional compliance letter from the state, the planning board began running different scenarios on how the MBTA Communities Overlay District could be amended to be found in compliance. If everybody remembers, there's different criteria that have to be met to be found in compliance, dealing with your capacity for your number of units, the acreage of your district, a requirement that a certain percentage of your district be contiguous, a certain percentage of your district be located within the half-mile radius, and all of those factors have to be met. So you can add a parcel here, but it may throw off your unit count, it may throw off your half-mile radius percentage requirement. So the planning board ran through 6 different scenarios, and the scenario that they are going to move forward with is, if you recall, there's 5 different sub-districts that make up our MBTA Communities Overlay District. Sub-district 4 is the area of Novo, Riverside Commons, Concord Park Assisted Living, and this is the Junction Village parcel. And the planning board is going to move forward with adding Concord Green to sub-district 4, which some of the conversations the planning board had, they looked at adding the rest of Baker Ave. They looked at adding some of the other parcels on Baker Ave. And what they heard the first time around was one, not adding just commercial property, because what that does is in the MBTA Communities Overlay District, you have by right multifamily. So understanding the, the fiscal constraints that the community is going through, the planning board did not move forward because to be found in compliance with all of the requirements for the MBTA communities, you would be adding multiple commercial parcels to be found in compliance. Other comments is why not add MCI Concord, and the planning board did not feel it's appropriate to add the overlay district to MCI Concord while there is this active process going forward with the advisory board, with the master planning study, and eventually developing zoning for this. To put MCI Concord or even a portion of MCI Concord into the MBTA Communities Overlay District means that whatever option the town chooses to come up with through the master planning study, by right, multifamily would basically supersede that if somebody so chose to do that in that location. So the planning board did not feel adding MCI Concord while there's still this robust conversation and community input happening. So other comments the planning board has heard dealing with, well, MBTA communities has a goal of trying to build new housing. Yes, that is a goal, and part of the reason that this group gets together as well is not just affordable housing, but just housing in general. Right now, there's other factors that go into play that the planning board considered, and that is primarily if we are not found in compliance by June 12th, then the town will be, one, in jeopardy of MBTA communities. Compliance is a criteria for many state grants that we have been able to receive over the past couple of years, but more importantly, if we are not found in compliance, then the town is not eligible at all for any type of Mass Works grant program, which would be used to maybe build a new water treatment facility or upgrade an existing wastewater facility or significant roadway or intersection improvements. That's the update for that project. And then lastly, for the mixed use bylaw, updating the mixed use bylaw is discussed in starting with the Envision Concord long range plan. Updating the mixed use bylaw is an action item in no less than 3 different sections. So the planning board has also received feedback from developers, from even our HSO staff, that the current requirements under the bylaw are not feasible, and this bylaw is not being used. The only time it's been used is for very small projects, such as Concord Outfitters did 2 units over at their store, and another project was 13B Commonwealth Ave, which is the green space at the corner of Commonwealth Ave and the Herald Street. They did receive approval for commercial on the first floor and 8 units on the second floor. That developer has come back, and that's not financially feasible. He cannot even move forward with any type of funding with a bank, because the numbers just don't work. So the planning board, based off the economic feasibility analysis that was done for the MBTA communities is looking to first change the affordability requirement, which is currently 20% of the units have to be affordable for a project of 4 units or more, which mathematically is actually 25%. To be 20% of affordable units for projects of 10 units or more. The planning board does have the same consultant who did the economic feasibility analysis for the MBTA communities bylaw is reviewing our current bylaw and the affordability component, as well as the proposed bylaw to make sure that things are on track to actually be able to be done. Currently, the bylaw says the commercial and residential has to be in the same building. The proposed bylaw does allow for a separate residential development if it is behind the commercial development, that the commercial streetscape and that that vitality of the business district is maintained. The third thing is currently the bylaw says the open space requirement has to be twice the gross floor area of the residential units. In our business commercial centers where we want mixed use and vitality, that's not feasible. It's just physically not feasible once you think about having some open space, having parking, having emergency access, pedestrian walkways, trash areas. So the planning board is looking at, has looked at other bylaws and is looking at 20% of the lot area. In the draft bylaw, a lot of things are not included in that 20%. So landscape islands in the parking lots, small areas for snow storage, green space next to walkways, all of that gets excluded. The draft bylaw includes parameters for that open space. So each individual unit can have a little balcony that's 24 square feet, or they can combine the open space for all of the tenants. But that requirement is still 24 square feet for each residential unit and getting up to that 20%. Currently, the current bylaw does have a waiver provision for open space to allow an increase in height to 40 feet and a decrease in parking if more than 10% of the units are affordable. There's no specific criteria to that waiver request. The Board of Appeals just needs to find that it meets the purpose and intent of the bylaw and is not substantially detrimental. The draft bylaw that the planning board is looking is actually looking to put in criteria. So for a waiver of the open space, if there's viable open space within walking distance to the project site, which is the waiver that Concord Outfitters was granted because right around the corner is Ride Out Playground, right across the street is the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, there's other open space opportunities. The waiver would also be allowed for an increase in height if the project shows that there's less, allows for less impervious coverage and increase in the open space, and then increasing the waiver requirement if 20% of the units are affordable. So that is my update for planning board items. So all of the current working drafts are up on the planning board's, either their current, on their current documents page, and any supporting information that they've been using is on their projects page. So it's still definitely a work in progress, and it probably will be all the way up to January 23rd, which is the close of the warrant. Good to know.
Great.
I had a question. If I could, Keith Bergman. And it might be a question to the select board, but for MCI zoning, what's the expectation now of when town meeting would be voting on MCI zoning?
I'm going to cover that.
Okay, all right. And there's the segue.
That's a great segue. So moving to the select board.
Good.
Chairman Howell.
Yeah. So I'm going to cover the MCI portion of this update, and I may look to Mary to also touch on the land use working group and the other 91B positioning. But with respect to MCI, we're focused on really the enablers of development for that property. And Elizabeth already mentioned the master planning, which needs to go forward. And master planning really has the basic goal of producing a package of regulatory recommendations that can go into a zoning process by the planning board. So it's a handoff. We understand at this stage of the game what the state Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, otherwise known as DCAM, going forward from here, wants to see produced in that. We've had discussions with them about who should lead, and have really concluded that probably Concord should continue to lead that. The DCAM would run a process on their own, but we are engaged in a fairly extensive look at town properties as well. And we feel that we can do a more comprehensive assessment of what Concord's true priorities are that go into the master planning process if we cover that ourselves. So we're looking to develop that scope, as Elizabeth mentioned, and feed that into zoning. If things go as we currently envision them, that zoning work, that master planning process would fairly seamlessly work into a zoning design that would be understood by the community and facilitate one of the biggest challenges with creating zoning, I think that the planning board has had is getting the community to understand it. So integral to that master plan development would be to make sure that the community really understands what zoning is being proposed and what that level of detail is, so that hopefully that will streamline the lead up to a town meeting that is focused on that zoning proposal and that development proposal for the community. So optimistically, that could happen as early as next fall. That's the goal that we're working towards at the moment. I think realistically it could take a little longer, and then we, at some point, as the select board, will have to decide whether that's really going forward as a special town meeting or part of a next annual town meeting. We are also focused on really three major dependencies that affect how that property can be used. One is the wastewater treatment facility. We're having really good dialogue with the state about that. One that leads to genuine opportunities for increased wastewater treatment capacity, not only from the availability of the permitted capacity of the existing MCI plant, which is operating well below its capacity, but also looking at ways to develop future capacity on that. And I think even Keith mentioned that the 91B Main Street project is to some degree gated by being able to be permitted to being connected to the wastewater sewer system that we have today. And if we can get relief from that, that obviously provides benefits to the housing it also provides benefits to commercial development all around the town. The state recognizes that would be beneficial, and so do we. So we're pretty optimistic that they understand what we need, and we understand what they're looking for, and that we should be able to negotiate that. Currently, the negotiating period for the wastewater treatment facility transfer runs through next August, and we're expecting that will be moving forward. The two other real concerns around developing the MCI site focus on the Route 2 design that MassDOT has underway, and the remediation of the site, given the relatively limited information that is available today about what challenges might be represented. There are obvious challenges in the built environment. Deconstruction of the wall, for example, is a substantial sum of money just by itself, and so having any development be able to absorb those costs is a challenge. And then there are some unknowns in there. That's the one that probably has the least progress to report. The state is not doing any detailed studies, and it's not our land, so we can't do them either. However, on the Route 2 design, we are collaborating with DCAM. We all recognize that access to the site from the northern part, think along Route 2, or the western part, think along Commonwealth Avenue, needs to be available, and the rotary redesign plans will heavily influence what type of access can be accomplished there. We believe that through the work that the advisory board has done, teeing up some of those concerns with DCAM, we can effectively jointly work to improve what MassDOT has in mind around Route 2 to facilitate better development potential at MCI, both for potential commercial, for housing, and of course on the table is municipal use. So in terms of housing specifically, one of the objectives that the select board has is to understand and negotiate what the housing development goals that the state may have and what that phasing might look like, meaning how soon could we be able to look to develop some housing on the property. And our hope is that we can sooner rather than later, or envision a project in the early phase there. That remains dependent on the master planning process, and the master planning process, besides zoning, really needs to envision what our requirements for circulation, meaning traffic on the site, are. So to line this up for you, we'll do a master planning process in the spring with a focus on high-level zoning and a circulation read access plan that we will then be promoting for inclusion in the designs that MassDOT will come in with. And then once we have those, we'll be able to get on a calendar for town meeting, as well as begin to discuss whether there's any earlier housing opportunities that might be phased into MCI. So that's kind of a longish status, but that's pretty much what we can say about MCI today. Segueing to the land use working group, we understand that it has been a little bit awkward to have the MCI advisory board doing so much detailed work on MCI and having that be integral to some of the work streams that the land use working group is in. So you'll see the select board working mostly in the month of January on how we can reconcile those things into one stream of work that we think will make it more efficient for town staff and clearer what the outcomes and the milestones are that we're going for. Is there anything else you wanted to say? Use a microphone, Mary.
Yeah, just making the link between the work of the Land Use Working Group and housing. As you said, Mark, the municipal consolidation, which is one of the work streams within the Land Use Working Group, is looking at consolidating the 18 sites we have in town, possibly into one. And if we were to recommend that, and that was accepted as a good option, that would free up a lot of other pieces of land within town and potentially make them available for housing.
Yeah.
So say, for example, the Land Use Working Group, the subcommittee that's looking on consolidating, recommends that we all consolidate into some building within Concord, and Ripley all of a sudden becomes available because the school administration is now being consolidated at another building. That is a site now that's available potentially for housing. And the 4 sites that we're looking at are Ripley, Kais Road, we call it the Church Street Complex, which includes the 55 Church, the Council on Aging, and the Carousel School, and finally the Peabody site. So those are 4 sites that are in play as we try to find out what's the best place to put not just consolidated municipal services, public safety, and DPW. What does that free up, and what's available now for housing?
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. I would mention that those are 4 sites. Some of the other sites are smallish and also have some limited housing potential, but they don't necessarily need the type of planning that the large sites go, because those sites could potentially also be reused for other purposes, and so the Land Use Working Group is trying to discern on behalf of the town what the best use for some of those properties are. The ones that Mary mentioned are showing up as potential sites for several different purposes, and so the question that we're really working on through the first half of 26 is what is the best possible configuration for those major sites so that we can understand what gets freed up. Sure. Just,
Mike.
I just want to assure people that if we were to recommend that we consolidate into a site, we're being very careful that the needs of each of these departments that are being consolidated will be met at the new site.
Right.
So we're not just squishing everything together to free up land. We're being very thoughtful and very careful about it.
Are there any questions for the Select Board? Well, thank you. Again, thank you all for your work that you're doing on this. Housing is an important goal, and we depend on all of these groups to help us achieve those goals.
Great, thank you, Mark. We have Stefan here now with the Concord Housing Authority.
Thank you, Kristen. We have 3 items on the agenda: capital investment projects, progress update. We've got a number of projects in various sizes and various phases. We are getting to the end of the air source heat pumps installation at Everett Gardens and Everett Gardens expansion. Everyone in those buildings, some of which were built in the 1960s, will for the first time enjoy central air conditioning next summer. And as the temperatures get hotter, and as you have seniors living in brick buildings that hold the heat well into the night, when it doesn't cool off overnight, having air conditioning is truly a matter of life and death. It can be critical. Another big project that we're working on right now is the septic system at our Strawberry Hill Road development. That is a project that the state has basically taken over because of the scope of the project, but they're working through their approvals and their bidding, and it's moving forward, but it's still going to take a while. And then we have some smaller projects, things from driveway repaving and that sort of work. But the biggest project on the horizon is the Everett Gardens fire sprinklers retrofit project. And I'm happy to announce that, in fact, our application to the state for multiple times matching funds, called the HILAP application, was filed today. And I want to thank Keith Bergman and the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust for giving us approval for $300,000 to kick that project off and leverage significant additional state dollars once the state approves it. We've had early indications that they're looking favorably upon this project. They do not want to see another fire like the fire in Fall River at the Gabriel House. And so it's going to involve considerable disruption. I don't know how many people here in town have redone their bathrooms or their kitchens or whatever. I know a lot of people in Concord, they just move out. They rent another place to live for a year while the construction goes on. That doesn't happen with our residents. They're living through the actual construction. Putting in fire sprinklers in these buildings is not going to be an easy task, and this will follow the work on the air conditioning, the heat pumps, heating and air conditioning. It will follow the work on the fire alarm systems. Some of those residents are going to feel like they're living permanently in a construction zone, and nobody likes that. But at the end of the day, when it's all done, they will be much safer. We all will be much safer. Our fire department will be safer because they won't arrive at an inferno in progress. So we're optimistic about that, and you will be hearing updates about that for some time to come. The last item is federal housing funding. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that HUD subsidies are constantly in question. They were even more in question during the government shutdown. The government is open again, but we're still dealing with reductions in funding, reductions in budgets. The city of Boston, or the Boston Housing Authority, actually made an announcement at the beginning of the month that their tenants were, their landlords were not going to get paid on time in December. Concord did not have all of the money from HUD at the time that we wrote the checks, but we did pay our landlords on time this month, and we did, after we sent the checks out, get the federal funds. But you know, we're halfway to January. January is a big open question again. So we're doing the best we can. We recognize that people depend on these rental assistance payments. We recognize the landlords depend on getting their rental assistance payments. But there's only so much we can do with money that we don't have. So we'll do as much as we can, as long as we can, but it's going to be an ongoing struggle. What HUD is telling us at this point is if anyone loses their eligibility for their subsidy, or they leave, they discontinue their need for the subsidy, we cannot take that voucher and give it to a new tenant, a new family off the waiting list. We have to take those dollars and spread them out over the people and the landlords who are currently being paid, because HUD is not going to backfill that. So, I know. So that's why we need more affordable housing. However, whether it's Section 8 subsidy or internal subsidy of a development like a 40B, or some other fashion home ownership that's subsidized with a 0% mortgage loan, we continue to need more affordable housing, because there are people out there waiting for it, struggling while they're waiting. But I want to end on a happy note. So we're optimistic that the state's support of the sprinkler project will bring significant dollars and significant safety improvements in the hopefully not too different future. not too distant. Thank you. Questions? Ed?
Yeah, I just want to mention how wonderful.
Well, microphone.
Can you go to the microphone? Thank you.
Just on top of what Stefan was talking about, I want to mention that Jennifer Polito has been our executive director for, I think, three and a half years now. And all our audits have been perfect. Everything is really running well as far as our main mission is the property management of the property. So we call it state-owned housing, but it's the Concord Housing Authority, and it's a pretty good place for people to live.
Thank you, Ed. I have other board members on Zoom. Any additional comments from you or from Jennifer? Seeing no sudden movement. B, did you want to say something? I don't know if you can unmute.
She said, I think she said she doesn't need to.
She doesn't. Okay, I can't see even with my glasses. Sorry. Multiple deficits here. All right, thank you all. Thank you for the continued support of the other agencies in the town.
Yeah. Thank you, Stefan, and it's great to hear about those capital improvements at Everett Gardens. I'm learning a little bit more about each project in town, and great to hear about the collaboration with the trust. So moving on to Concord Housing Foundation, the update from Rich.
Yes, thank you very much. 4 quick points. Keith brought us up to date on where the legislation is. I've been involved now for almost 6 years with the legislative process. And to quote Monty Python, the parrot is not dead. It's quite clear that at least on the Cape, the real estate industry is now behind the idea of a transfer fee because they realize there's no way to get workforce housing on places like Nantucket and the Vineyard without that money. So I think there's and one of the transfer fee bills for the seasonal communities actually got out of committee and has gone to Ways and Means. So I'm still hopeful, particularly with Rep. Gentile, that we might be able to piggyback on something even if we don't get our own HRP through. Our biggest project at the moment, folks, we're actually going to build something, is thanks to the town very much. They have said, if you want to privately raise and manage the process of expanding the house at Barrett Mill Farm, you can do that. And we are in the process of sorting out a septic tank full of issues that go back to the approval of the original septic tank there in the 1990s. But I'm optimistic that we're going to sort those out. We have plans and a preliminary estimate. We've set a fundraising goal of $300,000. And I'm happy to say we're about 2/3 of the way there with cooperation from the Ag Committee and Stone Soup and some very generous donors. The other thing I want to emphasize is that a number of members of our board have come to the conclusion, including me, that the only way that small homes in this town are going to be built with private money is through ADUs. And in the time since we passed the ADU ordinance at town meeting, something like 14 or 15 ADUs have been approved. That's almost twice what we actually managed to do in terms of explicitly affordable housing. And to move that forward, we, with the help of the League of Women Voters, I trust, will be holding a seminar on March 14th, or better yet, a workshop. And our idea is to bring together builders, architects, banks, people who have actually done it, to talk to people and say, you know, this is how you do it. And some of this may move, you know, the 20-year-old kid out of your basement. It may house your grandmother, but when grandma moves on, it may become a rental unit. And I've heard at least one realtor in this town say, you know, if people want to rent an ADU, I can rent it. So I'm optimistic about that, and I really hope we can get participation there. And then finally, I just want to say the foundation has funded a move-in allowance. We've had our first beneficiary this year who was able to move into an elder residence. She had the money for the rent, but not the money to move, and we've been able to help, and we're still interested, and we've had a good conversation with the town in making this available to town employees, new employees with student debt and no savings who may need, 3 months' rent to move in. We can help. So we're open to that, and we think there are things the private sector can do besides barking at the heels of the select board, and we're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for a matter of interest, how does the creation of an ADU impact the calculation on the SHI?
It does not.
Even if it's a rental unit?
No, well,
It's another.
no, in order for an ADU to get counted onto the subsidized housing inventory, there's a whole separate process. It would have to be part of, either 40B or a local initiative program. There are separate things that require deed restriction. You can't use your, there's fair housing laws that would permit you from, having it go to a family member.
Yeah.
So just it's two different things. It would be creating naturally affordable, naturally occurring affordable housing, but not SHI.
So it affects neither the numerator nor the denominator then?
Well, it would certainly affect the denominator for the next census. Because that's all housing will show up. All year-round housing stock is what the U.S. Census calls it. Would include ADUs. Those would each be a separate housing unit.
So unfortunately, that means that it hurts us a little bit, at least from the math perspective. Yeah. All right.
It's a little bit like the MBTA communities. You finagle with one of the multivariables and it shows up somewhere else. But
Okay.
I think that illustrates the point that for the town to control its destiny in the housing world, we need to be well above the 10% minimum, because when we're not, and the ADUs on the next census is the sort of thing that could change the count dramatically, and if you're not well above 10%, then you might be surprised, as we were this year, even though this time around we weren't surprised, but we knew it was coming.
I would like to say that I view ADUs that are not in the family as potential workforce housing, which may not be in the SHI anyway, but it will be the least expensive new construction. And whether it accommodates family members or a new teacher in the school system or somebody like that, it's the only way that I see us getting private capital into small units that could be workforce housing. They won't all be. But, you're right. Obviously, they are going to add to the number of units. But if we do what the 240Bs will do, we have some flexibility for a fair ways into the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank.
All right, excellent. The last up, we have the Community Preservation Committee, and I think Diane is here with us virtually.
I am. Good evening. I'm sorry to have missed. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
I can turn up my volume if that would help. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the fabulous presentations I've been able to hear. And Keith, I'm sorry, I missed yours in the beginning. I was at another meeting, but I'm grateful to be here and delighted to hear all the good work that everybody's doing. The CPC this season had a robust amount of money, unusually robust. We won't see this again for quite a long time, but it allowed us to do three things in relationship to housing. The first is to support the housing production plan for $56,000. The second is to support the RHSO, regional housing offices, for $39,000. And then the biggest is the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And the request is for $785,500. That's an enormous amount of money. And we have not made all of our final deliberations. We will do that when we reconvene in January, which may mean a small, very small, modest cutback in a couple of the largest funds so that we can more robustly support some of the others that we kind of put on hold for a little bit. But overall, it has been so gratifying working with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and particularly impressive, or at least appreciated, I can speak for myself alone, has been the fact that they have been able to give money, not just for a new affordable housing item, but to help with some other project that needed to be done, some other efforts in the housing, areas. And that really makes a huge difference. And I think allows each of the housing organizations to turn to each other, rely on each other, and help each other, which I think is pretty remarkable. The CPC again discussed the complexity of giving over large amounts of money without being able to have oversight as to how that money is being specifically used, as with the Assabet River Bluff project, which was I was the chair for that time period, and it was really an exciting project that brought into play so many of the talents and interests of our community together. So there's an ongoing discussion about whether we turn all that money over and then just say, okay, you guys go for it, and we'll stand on the sidelines and applaud. So I share that only because I think that will be an ongoing discussion. And I think Keith understands that and knows that. The last comment is just to say that one of the things that will also make a difference, it's not officially in the housing, but is the Assabet River Bridge, which was started by the Town Planning Committee, at least, and Elizabeth, I don't know if you're still on, but at least 3 years ago, if not 4 years ago, the wisdom to apply for money so that the state would help fund things, the wisdom to get ourselves on a list so the state would help fund things, and what that bridge will provide once it is finally constructed. What that bridge will provide is access to the housing that's being built by Welsh's Grape area, and be able to bring housing and services that are in the Baker Street, Baker Avenue area more readily to West Concord, and then obviously then on to Concord as well. So thank you.
Great. Any questions for Diane? We have one coming.
The bridge is another.
Again, Edward Larner, and I'm also the housing member of the CPC. I want to just note that Eve Iverson, who was here earlier, really worked a lot with Keith last week before we did our mammoth 3-hour meeting on all the different applications, and looks like we're going to be able to move ahead with the full amount that we requested, whereas originally the money wasn't there for many of the projects, and it looked like we were going to have to actually cut some of the projects, and probably the housing trust money was going to be reduced down to $500,000. But the staff and working, with all the different agencies, we're able to come up with quite a bit of money extra than we had thought we were going to get, about $2 million, and now it's at least over $4 million from various places that we didn't expect. And so I think the last few days before the meeting, Keith and Eve were together, maybe 5 or 6 different meetings to make it all come out the way we wanted it to do. So thanks for all the people that are working on it.
Thanks, Ed.
And thank you to Ed, and thank you for all the work. I'm sorry Eve couldn't be here to make the presentation. And speaking for the League of Women Voters, I'm on the steering committee of the League. We're looking forward to working with the ADU accessory dwelling unit efforts. And I think Ingrid Detweiler was on the call earlier. I don't see her now, but Ingrid is the chair of the housing committee of the League, and we're looking forward to supporting the ADU forum for folks. And thank you to Wynn Wilbur, who's done a wonderful job of helping us to encourage that. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for a very informative and collaborative meeting. It's been really wonderful to hear about all the wonderful work going on in Concord. So we're through the agenda, so we can reconvene, I think just about 13 minutes over, so really not too bad. So if you want to, I think there were a few committees that had quorum. Do we want to start, I think, the Housing Authority?
Yeah, Kristen, you can just, as our convener, you can just declare that the roundtable is adjourned.
Lovely. Okay, well, I will declare that the roundtable is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.